In 1970, you could walk onto a lot and drive home in a brand new car for $2,000. Today, the average new car in America costs $48,000 on a median household income of just $70,000. The cheap car didn't just get more expensive, it disappeared entirely. Ford killed the Fiesta, Chevrolet axed the Sonic. Even the used car fallback collapsed, with prices surging 45%. So what really drove affordable cars to extinction in America, and was it even an accident? Mass production once made the cheap car an American reality. In the decades after World War II, factories in Wolfsburg and Detroit ran day and night, stamping out hundreds of thousands of identical cars each year. The Volkswagen Beetle, arriving in the United States in 1949, sold for $1,595, about 45% less than the average new car at the time. This was not just clever pricing. Volkswagen built the Beetle on a single, simplified platform using a two-door body, a modest 25 horsepower engine, and minimal trim. High-volume tooling and relentless parts sharing kept costs low. By the early 1970s, Beetle production topped 500,000 units annually, driving down the per-car overhead to levels American manufacturers struggled to match. The Yugo GV, imported from Yugoslavia in 1990, continued this formula. Its sticker price of $3,990 was made possible by copying the Fiat 127 engine and sourcing parts from existing supply chains. The car shipped with almost nothing extra, no air conditioning, no power steering, not even a radio. Labor costs in Yugoslavia were a fraction of United States wages, and a devalued dinar let Zastava sell the car at a price no domestic maker could touch. Dealer cashback programs sweetened the deal, allowing even low-volume imports like the Yugo to undercut the market. High-volume production, simple engineering, and ruthless cost control kept these cars affordable. Dealers, too, played their part, using incentives and fleet sales to move inventory and stabilize prices. For decades, this approach delivered cars that students, first-time buyers, and working families could actually afford. The cheap car wasn't a myth. It was the product of a manufacturing system designed for scale, simplicity, and minimal frills. The result was a market where a brand new car didn't require a second mortgage, and basic transportation was within reach for millions. A cheap new car did not just help the first owner, it set off a chain reaction that shaped the entire used car market. When hundreds of thousands of Beetles rolled off ships each year, or when a shipment of Yugos landed at East Coast ports, those cars did not vanish after their first trip off the lot. 3 or 4 years later, they reappeared as affordable used cars, sometimes with faded paint, sometimes missing a hubcap, but still running and still within reach for buyers with tighter budgets. This steady flow of basic low-cost vehicles kept the secondary market stocked. For every college student who scraped together enough for a 10-year-old Beetle, or a young family who bought a used Yugo for cash, there was a sense that reliable transportation was always just a few years away, never out of reach. Rental agencies and government fleets cycled through compact cars, selling them on after a short stint, which meant there were always options for drivers who could not afford new. Even as the original owners moved up to bigger sedans or station wagons, their old compacts became a ticket to independence for the next wave of drivers. The used car lot was a patchwork of hand-me-downs, Beetles with worn seats, Yugos with dented doors, each one a step on the ladder for someone starting out. The presence of so many cheap new cars kept the bottom rung of the market strong. It gave teenagers their first taste of freedom and let working families stretch a paycheck just a little further. The affordable used car was not just a byproduct of mass production, it was a crucial safety net, quietly supporting millions who needed wheels but could not pay showroom prices. Every new car sold in America today carries a built-in cost that no amount of clever engineering can erase. Federal safety and emissions rules, layered on since the early 1970s, have created a baseline expense for every vehicle, regardless of size or intent. This is not a matter of optional features or luxury trim. It is the price of legal entry to the market. According to industry analyses and government regulatory impact statements, the cumulative cost of meeting these mandates now ranges from $800 to $1,100 per midsize vehicle and climbs to $1,200 or even $1,400 for subcompacts and small cars. The math behind these figures is not guesswork. Each rule, whether it is a dual front airbag system, electronic stability control, or the latest catalytic converter, adds a fixed amount to the bill of materials. For example, airbags and sensors alone account for $150 to $200 per car, while side impact protection and reinforced roof structures add another $70 to $120. The stability control mandate from 2012 tax on $120 to $180. Emissions compliance, including advanced catalytic converters and onboard diagnostics, costs $200 to $400 more. Even administrative requirements like crash test documentation and state-specific software for California add $30 to $50 to each car rolling off the line. On paper, these costs might seem manageable for a $40,000 SUV. But for a car meant to sell at $15,000 or less, the regulatory floor can eat up 10 to 30% of the total price. Small cars are hit hardest since the same crash structure or emissions system represents a bigger share of their sticker. Automakers must also spread millions of dollars in non-recurring engineering costs, like crash test development and emissions certification, across fewer units, raising the per-car burden even more. An economist would call this a structural cost floor, one that sets a hard lower limit on how cheap a new car can be, even before a single optional feature gets added. For manufacturers, this baseline is not negotiable. It is the starting point for every pricing decision that follows. The moment a buyer steps onto a modern showroom floor, the idea of the stripped-down, bare-bones car is already out of reach. Nearly every new vehicle comes bundled with an array of features that once belonged to the options list, now folded into the base price. Touchscreen displays, backup cameras, automatic emergency braking, and advanced infotainment systems are no longer reserved for luxury trims. Instead, they are standard equipment, even on the entry-level models. According to industry data, these technology packages add anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500 to the cost of a new car, regardless of whether the buyer wants them or not. This bundling is not just about convenience or safety. It is a conscious business decision. Salespeople explain that manufacturers streamline production by offering fewer trim levels, which means fewer chances for buyers to order a truly basic car. The days when a customer could walk in and request a manual transmission, crank windows, and no air conditioning are long gone. Now, the lowest priced trim is often a single configuration loaded with features that boost the sticker price and the dealer's commission. The logic is simple. Higher content per car increases the profit margin. A salesperson will tell you that customers expect certain comforts: Bluetooth, power everything, a digital cluster. But these expectations did not arise overnight. Automakers have gradually nudged buyers toward a new normal, where skipping the tech bundle is no longer an option. Even the so-called base model now includes a suite of electronics and creature comforts that would have been unimaginable on a Yugo or early Beetle. For manufacturers, this approach reduces complexity on the assembly line. For buyers, it means paying for features they may never use. The result is a market where the cheapest new car is still packed with extras, and the idea of a true budget vehicle has quietly vanished. The profit math behind these bundles sets the stage for a market that rewards high-margin vehicles and sidelines the affordable car once and for all. Profit margins shape the modern car market in ways few buyers ever see. For automakers, the numbers are clear. A typical compact car or small sedan earns a gross profit margin of just 5 to 6%. That means on a $20,000 vehicle, the manufacturer might clear a little over $1,000 before taxes and overhead. Now compare that to an SUV or crossover, where margins routinely reach 12 to 15%. On a $40,000 SUV, the profit per unit can top $5,000. This margin gap drives what gets built and what quietly disappears. In 2025, SUVs and crossovers made up 58% of new vehicle sales in the United States. The financial incentive is obvious. Every time a buyer chooses a higher margin SUV over a small sedan, the automaker's bottom line swells. Dealers, too, see larger commissions and more lucrative service contracts with bigger vehicles. Economists point out that this is not just about consumer preference. When the difference in profit per vehicle is this stark, companies reallocate resources. Research and development budgets, marketing efforts, and even factory lines are shifted toward the segments that generate the most return. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. As more SUVs are produced and promoted, their share of the market grows, and the case for keeping low-margin compact cars in the lineup weakens further. The math behind these decisions is rarely discussed at the showroom, but it explains why automakers have steadily trimmed their small car offerings. The logic is simple and relentless. Build what pays and drop what does not. Over time, this has transformed the American new car portfolio, making the disappearance of the cheap car not just a side effect, but an outcome baked into the business model. Small cars once filled dealership lots, offering a clear entry point for budget-conscious buyers. That landscape has changed dramatically. The Ford Fiesta, a fixture in the subcompact market, rolled off American assembly lines for the last time in 2019. Dealers who once counted on the Fiesta to bring in first-time buyers watched as Ford shifted its focus to higher-profit SUVs and trucks. The official line cited changing consumer tastes, but on the ground, sales staff pointed to another reality. It became harder to justify stocking a car that earned so little per sale, especially as safety and technology requirements drove up costs. The Chevrolet Sonic followed a similar path. Production ended in 2020 with General Motors closing the Orion Township line that built the Sonic and moving resources to the more lucrative Trailblazer SUV. For dealers, the Sonic's disappearance meant the loss of a reliable price leader. Customers looking for a new car under $20,000 were steered toward used inventory or upsold into crossovers that started thousands higher. The base price of a Trailblazer, which replaced the Sonic in the showroom, hovered around $23,500, well above what entry-level buyers could once expect. On the sales floor, the effect was immediate. Without models like the Fiesta and Sonic, dealers lost the foot traffic that smaller cars generated. The affordable new car became a rare sight, and the conversation shifted from monthly payments to how much more buyers would need to stretch for a vehicle that met their needs. The exit of these models did not just thin out the options, it closed a door for shoppers who relied on small cars as their ticket to new car ownership. A mechanic stands at the service bay, shaking his head at the numbers. The average transaction price for a new car in America now sits at $48,000. That is not a luxury badge or a high-performance model. That is the typical deal struck on a showroom floor, across all brands and all segments. 10 years ago, a new car cost about $33,000. Today, the price has climbed so high that the median household income, roughly $70,000 a year, now covers just 1.5 average new cars. In the past, that same income could buy 2 and still leave room for insurance and gas. Industry trackers like Cox Automotive and Kelley Blue Book confirm the scale of the change. Buyers who once expected to spend $15,000 or $20,000 on a starter car now face a market where even the most basic new models break the $20,000 barrier, and the mainstream choices hover closer to $30,000. The entry-level segment has all but vanished, and the gap between what people earn and what cars cost grows wider each year. Inside the shop, the mechanic scrolls through listings on his phone. The cheapest cars he finds are used, often with 6-figure mileage and a long list of repairs. New car affordability, once a given for working families, now looks almost out of reach. The numbers don't lie. The ratio of average price to average income has shrunk to 1.4 to 1, the lowest point in modern history. For many, the dream of a new car is no longer about choice or style. It is about whether the math works at all. A shopper sits at a dealership desk, calculator in hand, staring down a monthly payment that seems to stretch into the horizon. The sticker shock of an average new car price of $48,000 has forced most buyers to look for creative ways to make the numbers work. Auto loans, once a short-term bridge, now run an average of 71 months, almost 6 years. Stretching payments over longer terms keeps the monthly bill lower, but it means buyers end up paying thousands more in interest. Even with these extended loans, the gap between income and car prices keeps growing. According to Bank of America data, the average monthly payment for millennials rose 15% between 2021 and 2025, while wages barely budged. For many, the fallback is the used car lot, but relief there is hard to find. Over the past 5 years, average used car prices have jumped 45%. A 3-year-old compact that once sold for $13,000 now lists for $18,000 or more, often with high mileage and minimal warranty. Buyers who cannot swing a new car are left to choose between older vehicles that may need expensive repairs and newer used models that are not much cheaper than the latest showroom offerings. A mechanic flipping through service records sees the downstream effects. Cars that once cycled quickly through owners now stay on the road longer, often with deferred maintenance. Shoppers arrive hoping for a reliable ride, only to discover that even a basic used sedan demands a hefty down payment and a long-term loan. The safety net that once existed, cheap new cars fueling a robust supply of affordable used vehicles, has frayed. Now, buyers juggle longer loans, higher payments, and fewer choices, all while feeling squeezed by a market that no longer seems to offer an easy way in. Frustration grows as each coping strategy reveals its own limits, leaving many to wonder if the promise of affordable mobility has slipped out of reach for good. Today, the cheapest new car in America costs nearly $18,000, more than a third of the median annual wage. As automakers chase higher profits and regulations set a steep price floor, true entry-level options vanish. The promise of mobility for all slips further away. What's left isn't just a market gap, it's a growing divide on the road. Share your thoughts below and join the conversation.